mutations in any one of these that give rise to a defect in microbicidal activity in phagocytes and in a condition called chronic granulomatous disease. And in addition to enhanced susceptibility to infection, these patients have dysregulated inflammatory problems. They have autoimmune disorders, colitis, arthritis, and also some vascular phenotypes have been described. And this, in this case, turns out that the CGD phenotype actually is protective against atherogenesis, where you no longer have macrophages, but this loss generator invading vascular tissue. You have diminished atherogenesis. So in the case of NOX1, people have appreciated its high expression in the colon since its first description in '99 by Lambeth's lab. And the other place where people have focused attention is in vascular smooth muscle cells. And the production of superoxide by NOX1 in vascular smooth muscle cells has a vasoconstrictive effect. It's the opposite effect of nitric oxide. So nitric oxide, as you presume was heard earlier, is vasorelaxant, but superoxide is vasoconstrictive. So in the NOX1 mutant mice, several labs have described a blood-brain hypertensive response to chronic angiotensin II administration. And then more recently, work from Anthony's lab has described NOX1 having in that single cell is an altered, diminished wound healing response in the gut, and I'll show more slides about that later. The NOX3 has a very unusual expression pattern, particularly high in the inner ear. And your vestibular canals who have NOX3 expression required for making these bony structures that float around the inner ear and touch the hair cells. And so defects in NOX3 or other NOX3 supportive components give deficits in gravity perception and balance in mice. NOX4 is widely expressed, and people have emphasized its role in vascular tissue. Depending on the experiments or the experimenters' labs, there's been some debate as to whether the reactive oxygen generated by NOX4 is beneficial or harmful. So some say that NOX4 supports angiogenesis, and the loss generated from NOX4 can be adaptive for conditioning, and others say it's harmful. Still an open dispute. In the case of Duox, you have recent work by Vanderbilt showing that the Duox mutant mice have a blunted allergic asthmatic phenotype, and this speaks to a role in airway epithelial cells that I'll describe. And then work by Nicholas Christ's lab has shown that urinary bladder contractions are altered in the Duox1 knockout mice. In the case of Duox2, you have developmental defects that reflect the critical role of Duox2 in the thyroid gland for thyroid hormone production. So thyroid hormone production requires hydrogen peroxide to ionate thyroglobulin. I'll say a little more about that later. Recent work by Ulrich Neiss's lab has shown that genetic variants of Duox2 can affect very early onset inflammatory bowel disease. And work by Helmut Grasberger's lab has shown that the federal knockout Duox activator 1 and 2, in those mice, they have a susceptibility to Helicobacter infection. Just as an aside to illustrate the phenotype of the NOX2 mutant mice, mice with the NOX3 mutation have what they call a condition called head tilt. And the NOX0 mutant mice have something they call head slant. And these mice, they don't know up and down. And if you drop them in a peaker, they can't swim, they don't know up and down, and they drown unless you save them. Wild-type mice know which way is up to save themselves. And if you look in the inner ear, these otoliths or otoconia, these bony structures that touch the hair cells, are absent in the NOX3 mutant mice. So our lab is concerned with post-defense and inflammatory disease, and our own work has started with the phagocytic oxidase in the late 80s. And then in the late 90s, we got into several of these other non-phagocytic oxidases, primarily in epithelial cells. And over the years, we and others have accumulated evidence to support the notion that both of these epithelial NOX enzymes are involved in innate immune defenses. And the sort of circumstantial evidence that we and others have accumulated over the years include their induction by pro-inflammatory cytokines, case of NOX1 in the gut, induction by interferon gamma, TNF-alpha, NOX4, uniquely inducible by TGF-beta, Duox in airway, and in skin is Th2 cytokine-induced, Duox2 is interferon gamma-induced, seems to be an antiviral oxidase. Several of these oxidases show responses to microbial pathogen or danger-associated patterns, NAMS, PAMS, and just to cite a few, you have NOX1 responding to toll-like receptor ligand, or formal peptide, the formal peptide receptor, bacterial peptide, OX4 responsive to LPS, DUOX responsive to danger signals such as tryptamine, ATP, DUOX2 responsive to poly-IC, the mimic of viral RNA, or LPS, or marantyl dipeptide in the gut. So we and others have shown how these NOx enzymes accumulate on epithelial surfaces, and in the case of DUOX, apically disposed such that we think these enzymes are involved in the barrier function at epithelial surfaces, and that the ROS, at least in some cases, aims outward into the lumen from the apical surface of epithelial layers. And then we'll mention some data on partnership of airway DUOX and lactic peroxidase, the well-known antimicrobial peroxidase, and also illustrate how NOx1 is also very similar to phagocytic enzyme. So first part here on NOx1, just highlight here that NOx1 is responsive to these cytokines or microbial patterns, and these are features that have been recognized in phagocytes for years. And as mentioned earlier, they have dependence on RAC and these other cytosolic proteins, and the NOx organizer and activated proteins are detected by in situ hybridization within colon crypts. So here with this old slide from more than 10 years ago, in which we detect the messenger RNA with antisense, radio-labeled, and the silver grains are colorized in red. And you see that these NOx1 supported proteins are seen in the colon crypts. And their structures are very similar to the phagocytic homolog. They have all the features required for RAC binding, for binding of the counterparts, the organizer proteins, through tail-tail interactions with these proteins. And you have these SHB domains that dock to the cytoplasmic tail of p22-Phox. And lipid-binding Phox domains that bind phosphonolipid lipids that are common features of both the NOx1 and NOx2-based oxidases. And we have shown by way of mutagenesis that if you make mutations in NOx activator organizer proteins that disrupt these interactions, you have either partial or complete loss of superoxide production in these reconstituted cell models. So everything we know about the phagocytic oxidase assembly and activation seems to apply to the colon oxidase as well. And then work recently provided by Andrew Newsom's lab has shown that the similarities to the neutrophil oxidase extend even further in terms of this formal peptide receptor. This is a chemotactic receptor in phagocytes, and now there's a newfound appreciation in colon epithelial cells, in which they show that formal peptide receptor recognizes peptides shed by commensal lactobacillus species, and the lactobacillus stimulates the formal peptide receptor, the activation of ROS production by NOx1, and this leads to enhanced proliferation and migration of colon epithelial cells that were studied in these scratch wound experiments that were actually done in whole mice. So they have this microscopic endoscope that they claim can make a reproducible scratch, and they studied the wound healing response and its dependence on lactobacillus bacteria. And it turns out that so here's the wound. The epithelial layer is highlighted in green with the beta-catenin staining, and you see over the course of 1 to 4 days the re-epithelialization of this wounded area. And the wound healing response, when you compare it with the Hank's balanced salt solution versus exposure to lactobacillus, you see that the commensal bacteria promote a more rapid wound healing process. Here it's only partially healed, and here in 2 days, the lactobacillus promotes better wound healing. And that wound healing is scored here, with wild type exposed to lactobacillus. And that wound healing is compromised in the mice where they have the knockout of formal peptide receptor, or the knockout, this is intestinal epithelial cell targeted NOx1 knockout. We see impaired wound healing in those mutant mice. And in our own lab, we have confirmed and extended these observations with this transfected epithelial, colon epithelial tumor line, in which we can overexpress NOx1 and another NOx1 supported protein, the velocity redoxin 6. We find that the closure, so this is a wound gap that at time 0 is almost as wide as this entire panel. And then 20 hours later, if we overexpress NOx1 and the wild type form of velocity redoxin, we see the maximum wound closure. And if we have mutant forms of velocity redoxin, or NOx1, or read out the NOx1, or read out the velocity redoxin, you don't see the same rapid rate of wound closure. This is shown here graphically. The closure and proliferation also is maximum when we have the overexpressed system. Change topics now to NOx4. In case of NOx4, the very limited enzyme is not dependent on any of the cytosol regulators such as RAC. And in many cases, if you detect the mRNA reactive oxygen. So it's a constitutively active enzyme, a standalone enzyme. And its regulation is primarily at the transcriptional level. And we and others have emphasized its inducibility by TGF-beta. When we first described this gene back in 2000, we actually called it Renox, so renal oxidase, and then this other name NOX4 was imposed. And the reason we call it Renox is the expression of NOX4 is higher in the kidney than anywhere else, although it can be said that NOX4 is probably one of the more widely expressed of all the NOXes, and particularly high in many epithelial tissues, and also in vascular tissues, high in endothelial cells, and then we have findings in cancer cells that I'll describe. So its expression is detected by dark field microscopy. The inciting hybridization will give a signal in white, and you see that its highest expression is out in the cortical region of viewing kidney, here shown at a higher level. Then in this colorized version, you see that the transcript is highest in the proximal tubules of the kidney. And its high expression in kidney has provoked many notions about its function, although there is no good evidence of a phenotype in the kidney as yet. A reminder that it's an electrogenic enzyme, and so it may have something to do with transport functions in the kidney. It is a constitutively active ROS generator. We have suggested it could serve as a ROS, as an oxygen sensor, and there's recent work by Nishimoto that has found that indeed the response to oxygen concentrations for ROS generation by NOX4 is within the range of tissue oxygenation levels. So it clearly could serve as a transducer where the ROS generation could serve as a reporter of tissue oxygenation levels. And there are indications of many ROS responsive genes downstream of NOX4. And then others have looked at a number of receptor-mediated functions. Barry Goldstein has described NOX4 involvement in insulin receptor signaling. Bruce-Lab has described kidney angiotensin receptor signaling, and several groups, including ours, have looked at TGF-beta related signaling. Here we looked at NOX4 induction in hepatocytes that were infected with hepatitis C virus, or just as a surrogate, that the core protein by itself will suffice to induce the expression and activation of TGF-beta signaling, which acts on NOX4, acts directly on the NOX4 gene promoter to enhance its expression, leading to excess ROS production, oxidative stress. And we showed that the excess ROS produced in hepatitis-infected hepatocytes could be blocked by neutralizing TGF-beta antibodies, or by this dominant negative receptor, TGF-beta receptor, which acts early upstream of NOX4 induction, or we could block ROS production with this dominant negative truncated form, or by silencing, we could intercept excess ROS production induced by hepatitis infection. And so we have proposed that NOX4 could have a role in the excess oxidative stress that occurs with the progression of chronic hepatitis C infection, where you have, over the course of 30 years, you have early hepatosteatosis, diabetic symptoms, followed by fibrotic type disease, and then transformation and development of hepatocellular carcinoma over the course of decades. And people have appreciated for years that TGF-beta and TNF-alpha have major driving roles in the disease pathogenesis of hepatitis infection. And we would like to say that NOX4 has a big part of that. So this business of fibrotic disease relates to this phenotypic transition, the so-called epithelial to mesenchymal transition, or EMT, that you heard about from the earlier speaker. It shows that turns out TGF-beta is considered a major driver of EMT, and with this response you have a loss of epithelial cell polarity, you have the dissolution of cell-cell contact, the cells take on a mesenchymal phenotype of enhanced plasticity and migratory properties. And this EMT phenomenon has roles in normal physiological processes such as wound healing, differentiation, but we have emphasized its roles in fibrosis and cancer progression, metastasis. And several labs have highlighted TGF-beta-based induction of NOX4 in a variety of tissues that are susceptible to fibrotic disease, such as the lung. Anacalin has shown bleomycin induced fibrosis involves an induction of NOX4, and in kidney, and in liver, as we've indicated with hepatitis C infection. And then we have other findings with other epithelial cells, but TGF-beta induces NOX4 and affects migratory activities, such as, and these two breast epithelial tumor lines. Here we have a wound closure. So these are scratch wound assays at time 0, and you find that with treatment of TGF-beta, you promote the closure of this gap within 24 hours. And likewise, in this metastatic line, it happens within 6 hours. And TGF-beta treatment of these two cell lines reduces NOX4 transcript. None of the other NOX enzymes are affected by TGF-beta. So the wound closure appears to involve participation of NOX4. If we silence NOX4 or set the dominant negative inhibitory NOX4, you can interfere with the wound closure. And in studies that are published, cited here, we've looked at NOX4 induction by this transcription factor SMAD3, and we can block that with drugs or silencing, and the NOX4 induction will participate in wound healing, as I've shown, also fibronectin induction, TAC activation, an important cytoskeletal integrator that participates in cell motility. We can block all of these EMT-related events by silencing NOX4. So we asked, comparing these two cell models, this one, the metastatic line that migrates faster, we asked, well, what factors would account for that enhanced migration? And it turns out that this tumor line has mutation in P53. And so we're talking about P53 losing its tumor suppressive functions and taking on other functions that are pro-metastatic or pro-migratory. This is described nicely in this article. And we have, within this context, we have looked at NOX4. And it turns out that the effects of wild-type NOX4 on TGF-beta induction are suppressive. So we have suppressed NOX4 in this context. The mutant form enhances NOX4 expression. So TGF-beta is pleiotropic effects that are modulated by mutations in P53, and the healing rate, it involves NOX4. So a wild-type suppresses NOX4 induction, while mutant promotes. So we see here wild-type suppresses, in this line, which is P53 null, the transfection of wild-type suppresses the induction of NOX4 by TGF-beta. This is with TGF-beta. We have this induction of NOX4, and it's suppressed here by wild-type. It's enhanced or supported by the mutant forms of P53. And so we're looking at NOX4 levels. Here we're looking at migration or invasion. This is a matrigel invasion assay. And we find that the migration is suppressed by wild-type P53. And it's enhanced or supported by the mutant forms of P53. 175 to 280. If we include the dominant negative NOX4 in there, we can suppress the migration phenomenon altogether. So NOX4 seems to be a part of this TGF-beta and mutant P53-based migratory activity. And downstream with that, we have TAC activation. So wild-type suppresses NOX4, mutant augments the NOX4 expression, and these downstream effects. And to appreciate that on a single cell basis, we show that even in this cell line that has the wild-type P53, we overexpress mutant P53, we can override its suppressive effects. In these few cells that are transfected with the mutant P53, we get higher staining of the nuclei. This is the background cell wild-type expression, the other cells. And in these very same cells, you'll note that the NOX4 expression is greatly enhanced. And in these cells, on the migrating cell boundary, you see the NOX4 spread throughout the cell body. We have other studies here we describe in this paper showing that NOX4 is required for phospho-TAC activation. So to summarize this section here, we're talking about the divergent effects of wild-type and mutant P53 on NOX4-dependent migration, whereby so we now have a growing list of mutant forms that are found in some of the most common mutations in P53 in a variety of tumors, including pancreatic tumors, by the way. They all support higher NOX4 expression and cell migration metastatic activity, whereas the wild-type suppress that induction. So we consider NOX4 as a candidate target for maybe any metastatic drugs. So in this last section, describe studies on the dual oxidases. Remind you that these are dedicated hydrogen peroxide generators, and they're directly responsive to calcium. And they were first described in the thyroid gland. And there was a mouse model in which was in the Jackson collection, a mouse with severe congenital hypothyroidism. And Johnson et al. Have described a trait mutation in DUOX2 that gives this profound phenotype. This mouse, this mutant DUOX2 mouse, is basically a cretinism. So it's got all the hallmarks of thyroid hormone deficiency. They have greatly enhanced thyroid stimulating hormone levels in the serum, greatly reduced thyroid hormone levels, and they have stunted bone growth, overall growth, and they have this point mutation here that we have tested in our reconstituted cell model Agnes Dolka has shown that this mutant protein has a defect in its translocation from the endoplasmic reticulum out to the plasma membrane. And the role of Zoox derived hydrogen peroxide generation in thyroid tissues is twofold. You have two peroxidative reactions following a partnership of Zoox-2 with thyroid peroxidase. The peroxidase needs hydrogen peroxide to take iodinate tyrosine residues on thyroglobulin, so you get the iodination of tyrosines, and then you have also peroxidative cross-linking of tyrosines to give a ether linkage. So you have a dityrosine. This is a precursor of residues bound to thyroglobulin that then get exported and released as a mature hormone.